presentation is about using EasyChair as a pedagogical tool.
Okay, thank you. So I've never really had to follow a talking robot. I'm trying with the goatee, as you can see, but I've never had to do this. So anyway, this is some work on trying to use EasyChair in order to get graduate students to get a little more interested in the paper reading and paper reviewing process. And most of you who have taught classes know that this is no easy task. Students really don't want to read papers, especially for grades. So this, I should point out, this is joint work with Rao, and this was actually deployed as part of a graduate AI course that Rao is teaching last semester at ASU. And again, I should say that I'm very thankful to all of the students who took part because they formed my data sets. So thank you to all of the students. So like I was saying, one of the important things that graduate AI classes, most graduate classes actually, try to do is they try to instill this literature, survey, literature review quality in students. And for a long time, what's happened is there's been this practice of just assigning readings to students, readings that are particular to a topic or specific to a class, or maybe general readings and so on. And the problem with most of these reviews is they're mostly only write-only reviews, right? So if I'm a student, I'm assigned a task, I'm probably just going to read the paper maybe and then write a review in order to get credit for it. And one of the solutions that was mooted is that you try to get the other students to buy in. So you tell the students that it's not enough to write a review, you also need to go and look at other people's reviews, right? And you need to maybe read those reviews, comment about it. But the problem with this still is when I'm writing a review, I'm not put in a position ever to have to defend my own review, right? So even if another student is going to look at the review and comment on it, I never really have to go back and say, the reason that I said the following thing, or the reason that I gave the paper this rating was this, right? So one of the ways in which write-only and read-only reviews can be improved is adopting a best practice like a discussion phase, which a lot of conferences nowadays do. AAAI does it, a bunch of the other specialized AI conferences do it. So there's this review, there's a discussion phase amongst the reviewers and the senior program committee after the reviews come in. And so essentially that's what we wanted to do. We tried to recreate the whole peer review process, and most of you are familiar with the peer review process here. The one step that we had to add at the beginning was obviously because this was a fake conference that we set up. We had to come up with a pool of papers that needed to be reviewed. And I'll come to that, I'll give you some details on that, but basically we left that to the students as well. We said, why don't you guys come up with a pool of papers that you might be interested to read and review and critique and so on. The next step obviously is for the reviewers to bid for papers. This is something that happens in all conferences. You have a bunch of keywords that you're interested in, you bid for some papers, and then eventually you get assigned a subset of those papers as the papers that you need to review. And then obviously you go away and write your reviews for the papers. And then this part, this is the phase that most conferences have, which classes don't necessarily put in, which is that students have to take part then in discussions, and they have to defend their reviews and their judgments against questions from their peers. And finally, the students basically come to a consensus on whether to accept a paper or not. Now, there's a very easy way to set this up because EasyChair, which is a popular reviewing tool, I don't think EAI used it this time. I think we used ConfMaster for this, but AAAI I think has used EasyChair in the past. Right, yeah. So anyway, EasyChair it's quite popular. It's used by a lot of conferences, and one of the neat things is it provides a lot of administrative options to set up your own custom conference. So I could go in and create this custom built conference. It lets me set a bunch of options, and the most important part is that it's free. So they gave me a free license, and so. And it also allows you to export a lot of these artifacts that are created during the reviewing process. So it makes it easier to analyze them and so on. I'll come to that in a little bit. So in the paper selection phase, like I was saying, we asked the students basically to choose papers that they were interested in. And as the set that they chose from, we had the two previous major AI conferences. So at that time it was AAAI of 2013 and HCAI of 2013, and each student basically selected one paper that they were interested in, and there were no restrictions. We said any paper that's in the technical program, and we got a total of 36 papers. We had about roughly the same number of students in the class, and there was a very wide distribution of topics because if you look at this, I mean, it kind of reflects the things that people are doing. Again, this is from last year's AAAI and HCAI put together. But this is a rough distribution of the topics topics among the 36 papers that the students chose. So that was the first stage, choosing and creating that set of papers. The second one was obviously the bidding, and if for those of you who have not seen it, the bidding interface on EasyChair looks like this. So if I log in as a reviewer, I have 4 choices for each paper in the list, and I can choose that, I definitely want to review it, I could review it, I prefer not to, and then I can also declare if I have a conflict of interest with a particular paper. And then I get to see a full list of all the papers, and then I make my assignments on all of these. And basically, it's a constraint satisfaction problem at that point. You're getting all this input from everyone else, and you're trying to satisfy those constraints. The reviews themselves, the reviewers, we anonymize them from each other because we didn't want the students to, for example, collude with each other during the discussion phase and so on. So their names are not known to each other. And we had 2 kinds of evaluations. We had the multiple choice here, and we also had the text review of the paper. So basically, students get to choose one of each of these numbers, and then they have to justify that as well as other thoughts that they had about the paper and so on and so forth. All of this is pretty standard. And for the discussion phase, which comes after the reviewing phase, we actually have to give the students certain instructions, because remember, a lot of these people are reviewing papers perhaps for the first time. They're certainly not reading papers for the first time, but they're definitely reviewing it in a structured format for the first time. So we had to tell them particularly that, look, in the discussion phase, what we want you to focus on is 1, note the points that other reviewers may have missed that you may have brought up. Point out discrepancies between the scores and the reviews of other reviewers. So if I gave something a really high score, but I don't really have anything nice to say about that paper, or vice versa, and so on. And the last one was that when others do the same thing to you, you're expected to defend your reviews, you're expected to defend your scores. So you should put in some reasoning or justification. So just some quick statistics, and again, I'll be around tomorrow at the poster session if you guys want to talk about this in detail. But like I said, we had roughly around 36 to 39 students. Each one of them had to bid yes on one paper, which is why you see that number there. But then these bids were unrestricted, so they could bid maybe on as many as they wanted. We got about 7 bids per student, and this is the distribution of the final reviews. So we had one paper that had no reviews. The students just didn't go, didn't write reviews for it. We had one paper, we had 2 papers that had 1 review, 25 that had 2 reviews, so at least we had some discussion between 2 reviewers. And we actually had 8 papers that ended up with all 3 reviews, so like we usually do in conferences. Some more statistics. The average score, so the scores that they could give the papers were between 1 and 3, so 0, 1, 2, 3. And the average score ended up being 2.08, which is pretty high. But then I discussed this in the paper that some of this may also be because we were looking at papers that have already been accepted into AAAI, into HPAC. So there's certainly probably some kind of bias on that, and I'll come to that towards the end on ways to get rid of that. The average review length was actually pretty long if you look at it. So it was around 430 words per review and almost 1,000 words per paper. And the 1,000 words is 3 reviews or 2 reviews or whatever it is, but that's still pretty high. The discussion comments, so remember we had around 36 papers. We had a total of 193 comments. That's about 6 comments per paper. But obviously that's an average. So some papers had a lot of discussion, some papers not as much, and so on. These are just aggregate statistics. And the longest one that we had was about 16 comments from 3 reviewers, going back and forth, clarifying points, and so on. And again, these are all students. I want you to keep that in mind. So I can't obviously show you all of the reviews, but just a quick, there's one point that I do want to for the 36 papers, right? And these are some of the words that occur frequently, that stand out. And some of these are no surprises, right? Your words like approach, that's a generic word that's used a lot. Words like learning, model, these are AI-specific words that interviewers tend to use a lot, that papers tend to use a lot themselves. But what I want to point out now, so remember this picture, and then I'm going to go to another picture, which is the reviews with the discussion comments. And I specifically want to highlight certain words that actually, make their presence felt, which weren't in the previous one. So words like agree and reason and understand and so on. So these are words that have made it in sheerly on the strength of the discussion. So this is the reviewers trying to make other reviewers understand a certain point, trying to argue their point, maybe conceding that the other reviewer had a point about a certain thing and so on. So again, like I said, these are just aggregate sort of results. I'm happy to talk about the specific results tomorrow, but this should give you an idea of the, of what the students were trying to do in the discussion phase. And I think I wanted to wrap up with some lessons that I learned. So the first one, this is not something that should be a surprise. Students like getting free grades. A few parts of the assignments were really easy to do, so they were really free grades, it was completion credit. Things like selecting papers, bidding for the papers, we basically told them, you get the credit if you do this for this particular task. So almost everyone ended up doing that. And one of the ideas is maybe we should grade PC members on completion, right? So suppose you have a deadline and you want your PC members to respond by say Tuesday, right? Make it anonymized, but then make it a game for them. Tell them that you've got so many points because you managed to finish all of these. It's never gonna happen. But, the other one was things that drove discussion, the post-review phase, the discussion phase. What we noticed was that students didn't really tend to care too much about specific points about the paper that somebody else may have raised. So, if I'm reviewer 1 and reviewer 2 raised some point about the paper, I wasn't really too concerned about it unless the other reviewer actually, cared to direct a criticism at me, right? So if somebody said, oh, at reviewer 1, your justification for this, or your reasoning for this seems to be flawed, right? That's when students really took it seriously, and then that spawned up, a bunch of discussion threads. I mean, we see a lot of this behavior in real reviewing as well, but I think that's something that, if you have directed criticisms, people do tend to care a lot more about it, and they stand up to answer for those. And I think the most important thing I learned is that students are generous, not like our PC reviewers, who are often students themselves, but these students were actually really generous with their reviews of these papers. Again, like I said, some of that might be the confirmation bias because of the papers that I use. So I just want to finish with some ideas on future work. Again, there's a bit of a meta here. I'm really thankful to the reviewers at EAI for pointing out some of these things. Some of these ideas are thanks to them. Like I said, this was just preliminary work. It was a project that I wanted to implement. I wanted to see how it would go in a class of a sizable strength. I think there are lots of areas where it could be improved. One, obviously, is to mix up the quality of papers. So one of the suggestions I got was, instead of using just papers that have been accepted into AAAI and HKI, why don't you try workshop papers as well? Because some of those are likely to be papers that weren't accepted at first at conferences. That's one thing. Another is to actually come up with a proper metric for review quality. I don't know that I'll ever succeed in this. Forget me, I don't know that anyone will ever succeed in that. But that was one suggestion. One useful thing is to come up with an actual assessment of learning. So did students learn something quantifiable from this project? Did they improve their paper evaluation skills? What does it mean to actually learn how to evaluate a paper and so on? These are meta things that we don't pay much attention to when we teach students in our AI classes and so on, but they're important skills because eventually they're the ones who feed the reviewer pipeline, and they're the ones who control what papers get in and what work gets done. And finally, obviously, feedback on the reviewing process. Why are reviewers engaged? What kinds of reviews tend to facilitate more discussion? Because more discussion is almost always not a bad thing. The more discussion you have, the fairer chance a paper gets of being evaluated, regardless of whether it gets in or not. So anyway, these are some things that I'm looking at possibly implementing. And if any of you are interested in this, please contact me and we can talk about this. I will be at the posting session tomorrow also. And thank you.
So I think we have time for a couple questions.
Yes.
So in your future work, you said assessment of learning, and mostly you talked about quantitative measures. But did you do any kind of more qualitative, or get students to do more qualitative assessments? Like, did you ever discuss the process in class? Or
Right. So that's something that I didn't do on an organized scale. So I had a couple of these office hour sessions with the students, and I tried to get feedback from them on how they were doing. If there were certain things that they didn't feel like they knew, if they were lost on certain things, if they wanted clarification on certain points, how do you do a review and things like that. I did not do that set of students, fresh set of guidelines for maybe qualitative analysis of the kind you mentioned. I think that's something that I want to try. Oh.
Did the students get graded on things like the number of comments and so on, or was this?
Right, no, so that's a good point. I actually wanted to do something like that initially, but then I figured that's going to bias the review, right, obviously, because if I tell the students that the more comments you write, the more, the higher your grade is going to be, then that's just going to bias it. So what I ended up doing was, it was a compromise. I didn't want to do it. I basically ended up giving everybody the credit. It was just participation credit at the end of it. But I thought that was the easiest way, rather than bias my entire data by saying, your grade will depend on the length of your review or on the length of the comments. I don't think that's the way to do it. I do think that there needs to be, again, this ties back to what I was saying about, the metric for review quality, can we come up with a metric for it? So then you can actually judge reviews on their merit, and then you can tie that to the grade that the students get, for example. But we're very far away from that. I mean, if I had to rank all of these in order of what we're going to achieve, this is probably going to be 100, 200 years from now. So,
But one thing is that the students did not know at the beginning that they will all get approximately the same credit.
Yeah.
So it's like the reviewers. Some reviewers have much more interest. They took it very seriously. I think the thing that was surprising, as he mentioned, is there was one paper which had 16 comments, and they did not. I think they basically just took it much more seriously. And I think the frustration that people had, I mean, I had in particular before this, was you would ask people to write reviews and they'll just write it, nobody reads it. And write-only stuff is just, something that was the problem that this was trying to solve, and everything else is like icing on the cake, really, so.
Yes.
But how do you deal with that from the social aspect? Because you can get backlash from other students if you were to, say that their review was
Anonymous.
negative. If they were to review, if they were to say that your review was flawed.
So first of all, they were anonymized, so the students didn't know who. Yeah, they were back. So they were completely anonymized. So the students, and because it was all on Easy Chair, it's not, the students weren't discussing these reviews with each other offline, at least as far as I know. And it was very hard to collude on these things because they were completely anonymized. So yeah.
I may have just lost my recollection of this, but how did you handle sort of calibration at the beginning? So did you hand them all the same paper, everybody reviewed it, and you shared your approach to sort of give them a sense of here's what a strong paper looks like, a weak paper
I see.
looks like?
Yeah. No, I didn't do that at the beginning of this. I think that would be something maybe in a slightly modified form to try out, because you're right that students are not sort of equally distributed on this reviewer curve, and also papers themselves are not equally distributed. So certainly, I think that's a good point. I did not do that, but I think that's something that I can add on.
Thank you.